Anyone there? Anybody?
You should hear me, Joe. You got me? You got me in your headset?
Gotcha. You got me?
Perfect. I got you loud and clear.
All right.
Pearson, you hear us? We're good? You can
Loud and clear.
You can throw your headset on. Thank you. All right, Christine, we're ready when you are. Welcome to our special live fan Q&A with Giants General Manager Joe Schoen. It's all presented by AWS, proud partner of the New York Football Giants. Joe, appreciate it, man. You're just off the podium talking to the media. How are you? It's good to see you in Indy, man.
I'm good. It's great to be here. Obviously missed the Combine last year, so the opportunity to be back around not just the media members, but, general managers from other teams, personnel directors, again, just seeing some coaches that you haven't seen in a while. So it's great to be back here, and I'm excited for the week.
All right, we got a bunch of fan questions here. We're going to take some calls. We have some questions from YouTube, some questions from Twitter. I thought this was a good way to start, a very basic one. This one from the bird's eye view, not the Eagles, just the bird's eye view. What has been the biggest takeaway so far now that you've been in the front office in your current job for 6 weeks? What have you learned?
That my door is a revolving door. So as
no peace, right?
Yeah, as soon as I watch one play of film, 3 or 4 people come into my office and they have questions that need to be answered. So again, it's about time management, and again, I wouldn't wish to ever be away from my family, but they're still in Buffalo. So most of my work is done between probably 8 and 10 o'clock at night, just because there are so many questions that need to be answered throughout the day. And but it's been great. It's been fun. I wouldn't change it for the world.
All right, let's go to Mickey here. This is specific to the Combine. These are off Twitter. Are there any specific drills during the Combine you believe tell you more about player skill sets and how that can translate into on-field performance?
Yeah, I like the skill position, the routes, the receivers run, their hands, you can really get a good feel for that. DBs and safeties, I think, as well, their feet, their hips, their range, and then their ability to track the ball. The offensive linemen, I always go back to the tape, the offense and defensive linemen. Most of my evaluations from the film on them, but the skill positions I really like to watch. The quarterback, seeing them throw the ball, any of the routes. Again, I give them a little bit of leeway when they throw here at the Combine, because you may have a 5'9", 4'6" receiver run the first route and then like a 4'3" guy go the next time. So you've never thrown to these guys. So if their accuracy is a little off, I always give them a little bit of leeway and just appreciate the fact that they competed at the Combine.
You mentioned the offensive line draft process. How do you go about evaluating your offensive linemen? What's your process?
Yeah, the first thing I look at it, how big are they, their length, and then, can they play on their feet? I think balance and body control for offensive linemen is very important. Toughness, power, strength, all that stuff is very important. And again, I mentioned in my press conference just the makeup of the player, because I think it's very important for, the 5 offensive linemen, to be glue guys, to like to hang out, to be together. I think that's very important in terms of the continuity of the group when they got to work in sync together.
All right, let's go to our first phone call, Joe. We have a caller on the line. Steven's in South Carolina wants to ask about the draft. Steve, you're on with Joe Schoen. How are you?
Oh, fine, thank you. Joe, I actually called up BBKR a couple weeks ago asking about consensus picks, and I just wanted to get your assessment of how you see where drafts make a mistake. And in the sense that I tend to think that instead of taking best player available, most teams position themselves more for a player at a particular round. Do you see that as being a common mistake?
Thank you, Steve.
Yes, thanks, Steve. I think the way we've approached it throughout my career, the teams I've been with, again, I think if you take the best player available, you can't go wrong. You can't go wrong taking good football players, and I think multiple general manager decision makers have said it. If you paint yourself in a corner and you have to take a player, I think there's a bigger margin for error for reaching and taking a player that may not be at that value. So, I think you go through the whole process. Now, if players are equal on the horizontal board, then I think, that's a point where you can say, okay, these players are on the same line on our board and we don't have a, let's say, defensive tackle, then you go with the defensive tackle if it's a position, you already have on your roster. So I don't think you can go wrong, taking the best player available at any spot in the draft.
Question from YouTube here, Joe. I think this is a good one from Carson. Can you talk about the technological improvements you'll be bringing to the team? And also throw into the answer, if you can, some of the technology improvements with your draft evaluation process, specifically some of the GPS data that's out there now. I know from team to team it can be maybe a little bit wonky in terms of what comes in, but if you can just talk about those 2 aspects of technology and how it's helping you do your job.
Yeah, we're working on developing a digital draft board right now, again, where it's one-stop shopping. If we click on a player on our board, we can bring up anything from the Senior Bowl film, their school film, the scouts grades,
Wow.
what the analytics people say about them. Anything we want, we call it one-stop shopping. We can bring up the coaches' evaluations as well. And, so that's one thing. And then right now, we have the magnets that we use. And, when you move guys around the board, you have to type it in a computer where you put the guy. As you move, players around on the draft board, it automatically assigns them a grade. So it makes everything, that much easier in terms of, you turn on the computer, you can hold meetings, you can do anything you want. And then the GPS data, it's a resource that we're going to use. We contact schools and try to get it, the practice data, the game data. And, it's something we're going to, again, if anything is going to give us a competitive advantage, we're going to try to utilize it the best we can. And so far, again, we're trying to make as many changes as we can before the draft. But, come May, we'll really step back, assess what's available to us and what we want, and then map out a plan how we can make sure we have all that stuff, come the 2023 draft.
Another YouTube question. Andrew Rovit wants to know, Joe, how involved were you in helping Brian Dabel assemble his staff? Or is that something where you kind of sit back and say, you're the coach, you get to pretty much do what you want here?
Yeah, he would come to me and, I gave him some names. He shot some names off of, me. He said, hey, what do you think about this guy? What do you know? I would do some research in the background for him. I sent the slips in the league, to get permission and make sure, and we were doing everything we need to do in terms of the rule with the league and turning in the, how long we interviewed the guys, if it was Zoom, who was involved, all that stuff's administrative stuff. But, Brian did his research as well. And, again, I think he put together a fabulous staff, both sides of the ball and special teams as well.
All right, let's go back to the phones. Ralph is in Florida. He's up next with Giants General Manager Joe Schoen. Ralph, what's up?
Hey, how you doing, guys? Welcome aboard the Giant Nation, Mr. Shane. Just one question. Do you prefer pass rusher, extraordinary pass rusher, or solid building block offensive lineman in this draft?
Oh, Brendan, that's a good question. So is that tell me about that defensive end you're talking about. Is he, when you say that, is he going to give me a 10 to 15 sack guy?
I mean, a solid, maybe 10 sacks, great against the run.
Hey, that sounds like a good player.
Not bad, right?
I could sleep good at night with that. And it's hopefully you can find those guys later in the draft, but if not, I'd be good with that.
Thank you, Ralph. Appreciate the call. And just to follow up on the defensive ends, you drafted two guys in Buffalo, or had a hand in drafting, obviously, Gregory Rousseau and A.J. Epinesa, right? Bigger physical guys did not test great. So how do you balance them? There's a lot of, there is a lot of correlation between testing a defensive end and production, right? So what is it about them that said, you know what, I don't care so much about what they tested. I still think they're going to be really good players.
Yeah, and they were both good college players. They both, A.J. Epinesa had good sack numbers, and then Rousseau had a really good year back in 2019, if I'm getting my years right here.
Before the opt-out.
Yeah, before the opt-out.
Yes.
So he had a really good year as well. So to me, when you watch that, okay, they have all these sacks. Now, how do they get the sacks? Like, let's go through and see. Was it a scramble? Was it, did he really have to beat somebody? So to me, it's important to see how they got their sacks, how they get their pressures. Are they winning? When it's 3rd and 6, are they winning? What downs are they winning? Are they the money downs? Can they win one-on-one? Because that's what you're going to have to do in the NFL. And, so we look through all that, and both of those kids are tremendous kids. So you take the production they had, their measurables, and, I think they're both going to be really good players in the league for a long time.
Are you more inclined towards the bigger, powerful, more physical defensive end, or do you like the really flexible, bendy guys that are maybe more pass rusher than power player?
Yeah, I would like a combination of both.
Well,
but again, where coming in with Wink, he's had some of those. He's had both of those types in Baltimore. Big, strong guys that are physical that got knocked back, and then he's had some guys that can win around the edge. So I don't think there's one way you have to win in terms of affecting the quarterback. So if they can affect the quarterback, no matter how they do it, then those are guys we're going to look at.
Yeah, Brendan in Long Island, he has a question about pass rushers as well. Brendan, you're on the line with Joe Schoen.
Hey, thanks, guys. So, Joe, I was wondering how kind of the guys that fall into your spot in the draft impact how you would talk or consider a trade back opportunity.
Did you get that?
Yeah, just in terms of what guys might consider dropping to you and how that might impact, and Brendan, thanks for the call, impact whether or not you would consider a trade down, I believe is what he asked.
Yeah, I think if somebody calls and we're on the clock and there's a guy we're in love with, again, you can't go wrong with taking the player. You're going to sleep good at night, and the guy's going to be an impact player for your team. So if you're not excited about the players that are there and you got an opportunity, that's when you jump on those opportunities to move back if there's not somebody there that you're in love with.
Adriana has a really good question off of Twitter. How important is a player's injury history to you? How much stock do you put into previous injuries as a cause for concern? The old phrase is the best predictor of future injury is past injury. What's your philosophy in terms of that?
You took my quote. That's what I was going to say. Yeah, exactly. So, no, I think that's real, and we got to look at it. And then again, I'm not a doctor, my staff's not a doctor, so we got to really lean on our medical staff to, give us their input. They do MRIs, they look at these guys, they poke and prod them, and they're the medical experts. So we're going to rely on their input along with what we get from the schools and then our evaluation, and try to make the best decision we can.
All right, let's do one more phone call, then we have one more on Twitter and YouTube. Kevin in New Jersey will be our final caller. Kevin, what's going on?
Hey, how you doing? Welcome to the Giants.
Thanks, Kevin.
Quick question. I hear a lot of people saying, the Giants should take 2 offensive linemen. How realistic is that, in 5 years, that you have to, because when you draft in the first round, you want to keep these guys, and you're going to have to re-sign both of them.
No.
Does that make sense to have two people pretty much in the same area that you're going to put that much money into?
Yeah, that's a good question. And
Thank you, Kevin.
Kevin, I think that's a great problem to have. I'll sign up for that if you've got 2 really good players that are going to call for a lot of money on the open market. So I would sign up for that. Again, I think you can get all offensive linemen anywhere throughout the draft. I think most teams have showed that. There aren't many teams that are made up of 5 first-rounders. But if there are 2 players that are at 5 and 7, they happen to be offensive linemen, and they're going to be really good players for 4 years, and then we got to decide what we're do the 5th-year option. Then we'll cross that bridge when we get there. But I think those are good problems to have.
In fact, I don't think your lines in Buffalo or even Carolina, off the top of my head, did you guys have any first-rounders on those lines?
No, not in Buffalo. Back when I was in Miami, I had Laramie Tunsil. But again, we had a couple rookie free agents, 2nd, 3rd rounders on the line in Buffalo. So there's different ways to build the offensive line, and I don't think there's any correct way that says you have to do it this way.
I got one more question from Twitter I want to get in here, Joe. And this is a good long-term question from Max, a good way to wrap this up. We know you have a plan to build your roster versus the one you're inheriting. How long do you think it will take for you to execute your plan, and how much balancing that can be accomplished in year 1 of that process?
Yeah, that's a good question, and I keep getting asked a similar question, but we're going to try to be competitive today and still build for tomorrow, and we got to keep that in mind. It's not a rebuild, so my job is to figure out the way that we can get the salary cap in order and also be a competitive team, and then utilize the draft picks, and long term build through the draft, develop our own, teach them the way we want to do things, assimilate them into our culture, and then ideally you're rewarding your own players.
And I got to imagine we're going to be seeing some of that roster stuff coming up pretty soon here with free agency on the horizon.
Yeah, we've got some agent meetings with some of our players that are on our current roster, so we're going to start those conversations, and you can have conversations with other GMs and decision makers around the league, potential trades or whatever it may be. So over this week we should be very productive and have a little bit better idea what we're going to do by the end of the week.
Joe, this was great. Thank you so much for spending some time with us and the fans today as you answer some of their questions.
All right, thanks for having me.
Appreciate it. Giants General Manager Joe Schoen, all brought to you by AWS, proud partner of the New York Football Giants. Of course, stay tuned, folks. We'll have Big Blue Kickoff live from here, right at Radio Row, coming your way at 3 p.m. We thank Joe for joining us, and we'll see you then.